So around the end of June or early July 2026, I noticed when I was recording videos with OBS, these MKV files, which is what gets produced, they were not getting automatically generated thumbnails. You can see here little thumbnails for each of the images and the videos, and this is really nice, right? You can imagine opening up Thunar or whatever file explorer that you have. It's nice to be able to see these thumbnails, and that's thanks to a couple of different things. So the Tumbler daemon's running in the background, and then there's also the ffmpegthumbnailer plugin for that. But yeah, this was just showing a default video icon instead of generating the thumbnail. So in this video, we're going to go over some of the debugging steps I did to figure out what was wrong. We'll go over along the way how to learn more about MIME types. We're even going to be using some debus commands to see what Thunar is sending over. So in the end, we'll have a custom Tumbler config file to support things, to get things to work. And I would imagine even maybe by the time that you watch this video, especially if it's quite a few weeks in the future, then this will be fixed because the pull request has already been merged in one of the associated packages. So check it out though. First thing I wanted to understand here was, okay, what are some of the moving pieces here? And, if you run something like pacmanql here on ffmpegthumbnailer, we can get a list of all the different files associated with this package because, I figured like, okay, I'm dealing with a video file. It's probably related to this ffmpegthumbnailer package here. But on the very bottom here, we have this little file here, ffmpegthumbnailer.thumbnailer. So let's go and check out this file here. So in this case here, we can see all the different MIME types associated with this plugin here for Tumbler. And yeah, you can see there are MKV entries in here somewhere. So here's one of them. We have a video one. So it's not spelled out MKV. There's the full name for it here. And there's a couple other entries here if you squint hard enough, but this is the important one. And I guess maybe we should just grep it out anyways, just so we can see. So if we do, there we go, that should be enough here. So we can see the three entries here. So we have video/x MKV here. And then we also have this, it's wrapping to two lines here that ends with -3D. And then here on the bottom, we have another one here, application. But okay, that's good information to have, right? These are the different MIME types supported here. So then I started thinking like, okay, did something change in the last, week and a half or whatever it happens to be where, maybe the MIME type is no longer this, so there's nothing to get picked up. And then, maybe there's errors being thrown or something to be said. And then, I started looking at some journalctl lags. For example, you can do journalctl, and then for user mode, and then the unit is going to be Tumbler, I believe. And then here we can actually see no entries is Tumbler D. Yeah, there we go. Well, actually, let me do it for just the current boot because there's a lot going on here in the logs. So particularly here at the current boot, then there's some warnings here around plugins that I don't have, but there was no errors being thrown by Tumbler here around those MKV files. So then I started thinking like, okay, maybe Tumbler is not even being able to even see this at all. For example, if it's not even able to detect that something is coming in, like how would it know to even make a thumbnail for that? So yeah, that's when I started looking at like other commands here just to see like, what are these MKV files being identified on my system? So let's take a look at that. So if we go to something like my temp directory here in my home directory, I've got a whole bunch of different MKV files here. These are being generated from running OBS here as I'm recording the video now. But yeah, there's whatever, 8 of them, I don't know, give or take. But I'm going to grab this one here and we can just run xdg-mime. And then we can do a query on the file type for this file here. And we actually get video/x and then MKV here. And what's kind of interesting is, if we take a look here at that back command here, then this here actually matches the very first match over here, right? Video/x/MKV. There it is, and there it is. And this starts to get a little bit interesting, right? Because it's like on my system here, when I run this command, it is identifying this as this MIME type, but the MIME type is also covered by this ffmpegthumbnailer. So you would think like, these worlds agree on things, like why isn't it working? So then I started diving a little more into detail on how MIME types are actually determined on your system, and there's all sorts of different interesting things here. So if we go and just rerun this command with -x, because xdg-mime here is an actual shell script, so let's run that now. We get all sorts of more information here. I've done videos in the past around using set-x, really good for debugging information here. But on the very bottom here, you can actually see what command is really being run to get that MIME type here. So there's actual file command here, and file is an actual package on Arch Linux, by the way. That's something you can install. But if I go and run this here, let's take a look at the output that we get. We do get the same exact output that we saw when we ran the actual xdg command, just like this, right? Now that is pretty interesting, right? These things line up. That makes total sense here because, this command is being called under the hood by this one. But yeah, we're still not really too much closer on understanding like what is actually happening here. So then I was like, okay, let me Google around and just like see what's up here. And Yeah, in this case here, we can actually go and run some dbus command, which I don't have memorized here. Here's the blog post related to this one. We kind of went over this, went over that, blah, 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 finding this, finding that, pretty cool. Okay, I should mention here too, I guess, xdg-mime actually, on my machine here is using the file command here because I'm running Neri, but it will look at your desktop environment and potentially choose a different backend or a different database to, return the value here for the MIME type. So yeah, the file command ends up using libmagic here, but depending on your environment, maybe it'll use something else. And actually there is this gio command you can run here as well, to potentially get different information. So let's run that on this command here, or on one of these files here. Let's just use the same one, which would be 34. There we go. Here, and we can actually see though, the attributes here, it's actually video MKV. The -x there is missing. So that is pretty interesting information here. Like, okay, there is a discrepancy here, or different tools are reporting different content types here for the MIME type here. So, okay, that's pretty good to know. But yeah, in this case here, I actually did find inside of here a commit here for the package related to this one, which is shared MIME info. By the way, we're kind of going on a side topic here. It's not super related to the outcome here, but it is good to understand like some parts of the system here. But yeah, in Arch Linux, there is a shared MIME info package. And yeah, I found this commit here where, the X was actually getting removed here. And yeah, this command will use this shared MIME info database as its backend, so that would make sense here. And this was actually released not that long ago. This commit is from a couple of months ago, but the release itself just happened very recently. So yeah, that could definitely be aligned there. That totally makes sense here. But yeah, now let's actually go and get some fun here using dbus. So if we run this command here, then we'll take a look here. It's not going to produce any output yet, right? There's no output there. It's kind of waiting for things to happen. But if I open up Thunar here, maybe go to this temp directory here, where I've got some videos that are actively being recorded by OBS now, technically the one right here by the mouse. These are older ones just because, I tend to record the very first 30 seconds of the video kind of frequently until I figure out like, okay, I got my flow going. We're going to stick with that here. But if we take a look here now at some of the output, we can actually see that we have a lot of output here. Actually, I'm going to close that out just so it's not scrolling anymore. But for each of those thumbnails that were generated, we can actually see here, this is like the important takeaway here, is for each one of these files here, yeah, the string there is video MKV here. There's no X there. So this starts to maybe solve some of the mysteries to be like, okay, so when Thunar is sending this over dbus to whatever, protocols are being met here, I don't really know the low-level details of all of this, but basically the Tumbler daemon is going to pick this up and it's going to be like, oh, let me see what I can do with this. But then there's like, okay, well, nothing matches for this. So like, I don't know how to render a thumbnail for that. So that's kind of neat. Then I started Googling around to be like, okay, can I customize this in some way? And the answer is yes. So if we take a look here at .fried rice here, and we take a look at the thumbnail file here for thumbnailer, we're only going to focus on a couple lines here. Don't worry if you're not using .fried rice. Again, it doesn't matter because I'll show you where to put this in the end. Just easy access to the file here. So this file looks very similar to the one we just took a look at here. Just a lot less is being defined here for the MIME type. So try exec is the same. We're execing the same command here. And here is the MIME types for MKV. Although I look at this, I realized I forgot the one for -3D, which would be pretty interesting. I'm kind of curious if just this by itself would work. So let's do that. So by the way, just a heads up here, going back to the terminal, that file actually will be in .local and then share and then thumbnailers. In this case here, it's a symlink pointing back to my .files with .fried rice. But yeah, you would just create something like mpv.thumbnailer. The file name here isn't important, the extension is. But yeah, that's how all that is set up here. But, I do want to now just restart Tumbler to see if that works with just the single entry that we need here. So let's do that. So we could do sudo systemctl. We need to go in user mode because Tumbler is running there, and then we'll restart Tumbler. I think it's Tumbler or maybe Tumbler D, but we'll see. I think there's a D. All right, I think that's better. There we go. Okay. Is it just Tumbler then? Oh, maybe it isn't user scoped. I thought it was. Hold on. Let me look at the blog post here that I wrote. I'm pretty sure it was, but maybe not. Okay, so blah, blah, blah. Restart Tumbler D. Oh, yeah, duh. You don't run it with sudo because it's --user. Yep, there we go. That totally makes sense. All right, let me clear the screen so we have some more room. And there we go. Nice. So now Tumbler D has been reset there. And, well, it's kind of interesting now that there are thumbnails here that have already been rendered. And I have no way to really tell if a new thumbnail is going to be created here. So I guess what I could do is I can stop this recording and then I'll start this recording, come look in this directory here, and we'll see if it gets updated together. So I'm actually going to not even, I'm going to kill out Thunar here. then I'll stop recording. And now I'm back to recording now. So what I could do is open up Thunar. We'll go back to this temp directory. There it is, and it actually got generated, which is super cool. So yeah, you can see that one that just got produced here. That means those other lines there weren't necessary. In fact, I actually want to go one step further now to be like, let's verify things actually don't work, which they definitely don't, but yeah, let's do this. So in here, I'm going to move MPV just to, I don't know, MPV thumbnailer.back. Yep, that'll do it. And then we can restart Tumbler D here, and then we'll go back to here. And here we can actually see that there is nothing generated here, right? We can see this is the default experience here if you don't make this modification. So now we go back to here, and then we're going to do this move command again. But in this case, we'll go back to how we just had it a second ago. There we go, restart Tumbler, and then we go back to here, and boom, there it goes. We're in business here. So I'm going to actually go make a commit up in a little bit for this one. We only needed to add the missing MIME type here. We don't need to add all the MKV ones. That's even better. Probably refine this comment a little bit too, because I actually learned some stuff along the way, because I made this commit a couple of different days ago. But in any case there, that is a way to customize things here. And again, this is related to MKV files. Let's say that you're using Tumbler and maybe it's not creating thumbnails for whatever file extension that you want. Now you have some tools here to go and look at, the outputs of certain things, understand a little bit more about MIME types and configuring stuff there. Let me actually go here. And yeah, well, the last thing here, I guess, is, this is basically only temporary because there is a patch already in ffmpegthumbnailer here to add the new name here. And then, yeah, once a release is made here, then we'll be in business and this file can actually completely go away. But yeah, I love this idea of, just using Linux here. We find some issue. It's kind of nice just to be able to pry into some of the details, resolve it on your own, just with a little bit of custom configuration. We all benefit here because the fix was applied upstream to the library, and then eventually something like this can go away. So yeah, it's a great example of just like having a nicely tuned system here where, the benefit of everybody coming together produces something really great in the end. So if you have any questions, let me know in the comments below. I'll do my best to answer all of them. And if you like the video, please give a thumbs up. Really does help a lot. Thanks a lot for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.